let's get into it with Joe. So I'm going to let Joe explain this, and I'm going to play this all the way through. And then we're going to get into, and I may pause it when he gets into the meme copium stuff, which is at the end, but I'm going to let Joe do it. I will put this at 1.25x because Joe does get a little bit slow at times. I think that's a better speed for Joe, but let's get into this. Actually, you know what? Is the audio shared? Let me make sure I didn't scuff this. I think I may have scuffed that. Hold on. No, audio is good. Cool.
170,000. That's true. I haven't talked about it because I don't like making stuff about me.
Okay, I lied. I'm going to pause it a little bit. Okay. I lied, guys. I'm sorry. When Joe says he hasn't talked about it because he doesn't like it to be about him. Look, nobody wants to talk about your own dirt. I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. I'm not going to sit here and do confessionals with everybody every day, right? Nobody likes to do that, but it's not because I don't like talking about me. I enjoy talking about me, but nobody likes to talk about the L's in their life, right? That's just human. Come on, man. Let's just admit that, right?
I'm not embarrassed by it. If anything, I think that this entire situation is sympathetic. If you want to know what happened was this: when I was shutting down, you all know, or many of you know, and I'm probably now I'm gonna have to address this. I'm probably gonna end up addressing this on Saturday night, and the internet can go crazy for the next 3 days. And okay, fine. But yes, I was hit with a judgment of $117,000 when I was shutting down my company. So we were,
and to be clear, Joe was a debt collection lawyer. So Joe was a debt collection lawyer. He had a debt collection firm in New York, right? So be aware of that.
So we had a 3-month winding down phase where we were like basically transferring and training another company how to do what we do. So we were working with a skeleton staff. There was a letter that went out, which went out to a debtor, which should not have been sent. And there were legal flaws in the letter. It was basically demanding a subpoena. It was issuing a subpoena across state lines on too short a time window. There were a couple of flaws in the letter. I never followed up on the letter. I never did anything with the letter. It was a letter that went out. The recipient of the letter was someone who actually owes $8,000, $9,000 or thereabouts. And
yes, and correct. He was a partner. Someone mentioned that he was a partner of the firm. Yes.
He claimed that receipt of the letter caused him tremendous emotional stress, and that this is a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So I basically, and he sued me personally. The reason he sued me personally is because my name was on it. The letter had been signed off by someone else. They basically would take a stamp and they would basically stamp my signature on it. And I'm technically obliged to be aware of anything like that. There were thousands of letters that went out, and this was one of the last of many tens of thousands of letters that went out. And this one was flawed. He claimed that he was emotional wreck. He went to a lawyer 2 days later, never got any counseling or anything for it. The court found a $500 statutory violation. There was a hearing that I attended, I was self-representing at first.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said, I can't believe this is 1.25 speed. This is 1.25 speed.
And it got too stressful. Because the key is the legal fees. It's not his actual damages, it's the legal fees. And it basically is a racket. The entire system is set up as a racket. No matter what.
The majority of this judgment is legal fees. So he has to pay legal fees. Now, that is not, just so he's making up, he's calling it a racket, but this is not that weird. This is not that weird for types of cases. There's many cases where legal fees are included. So it's not like the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Protection Act, is the only act that has legal fees included. Right now, this is a bit of a new thing to include these as part of the FDCPA, right? However, it's not like this is the only area of law where this exists, right? Any lawyer who knows anything about other areas of the law knows that legal fees can be included in a judgment, right? This isn't the first case in America that legal fees have been included in a judgment ever, period.
But I was offering to try and resolve this. They wouldn't take it. And they were demanding like out of the gate, like $25,000. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? I didn't have $25,000 to give them. And it was ridiculous. So their settlement demands were insane. And I ended up having to hire a lawyer. And because I was like, I need someone who's an expert in defending FDCPA violations. And I think that the work they did there was fine. But the way the system is set up, over the course of time, because I was fighting this for 7 years. They racked up what they claimed was $200,000 in legal fees. The overall judgment against me was for $8,000. This is based on his purported emotional damages that the magistrate judge found that in her estimation was worth $8,000. Understand that his emotional damage lasted, according to his wife. His testimony, to my mind, sounded completely lacking any credibility. He just seemed like a complete slimy dude. His wife certainly had more credibility. And she was like, saying how worried she was, how stressed he looked and stuff like that. Okay. Well, anyway, bottom line is, my opinion on it doesn't really matter in the context of things. Magistrate judge found and recommended $8,000 for him for his emotional damages. And then they tacked on another $100,000. They slashed the legal fees by 45% and tacked on another $100,000 in legal fees.
So $100,000 of that is legal fees, like I said before.
Grand total judgment of $117,000, which is like every step of the way. I was like, let's sell this. Ridiculous. This was insane. It was insane. So yeah, so now I have $117,000 judgment against me personally. There you go. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it yet.
I mean, he's got to pay it at some point.
Really tried executing that, but it's not fine. It's pretty stupid way of saying it. It's actually liable. It's a liability. But the $117,000, $100,000 of it was legal fees because these lawyers were just insanely aggressive and completely unwilling to sell at any stage of it was like basically like, how do I get out of this? How do I make this thing end and just pay? And no, there was just no way to make it end. There was just nothing I can do. That doesn't even count. The $117,000 doesn't even count what I estimate was roughly $40,000 in legal fees that ended up incurring, and that's only because they came on board for the last year. I was fighting it myself the first 4 years. If I had a lawyer throughout this whole thing would have ended up costing like $500,000. So,
and he's right about that. If he wasn't representing himself for part of it, it would have cost him a lot more money, right? So he had to pay his own lawyers on top of this. This is a very expensive thing. He did try to appeal it. The state judge, he tried to remove it to federal court, and the state judge was like, nope, and remanded it back down and said, don't even try to appeal this.
Yeah. Anyway, so I saw a couple of people were making comments about it.
Okay, so here we go, and I'm going to slow this back down because it's getting into a couple people making comments about it. So let's play this here. Now I'm going to start pausing it because it's talking about meme.
On some in some of the chat, and I was just like, I'm just not in the mood to deal with this right now. But it is what it is. I'm not embarrassed by it. I mean, a letter went out that shouldn't have gone out, and I recognized that when I saw it. I was like. The lawyer called me and I was like, don't worry about it. We're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to follow up on it. And he's like, oh, I'm going to follow up on it. I'm going to basically come after you and build my law practice off of this, I guess. So it really, to me, is a bigger statement about how insane the FDCPA is. This is one of the reasons I personally can't stand Liz Warren, because she's the one who set all this in motion.
So he tries to make this a very this is about politics thing, because I know that's his current thing. But real quick, just to pause here, this is something that is absolutely not political. It's kind of apolitical, right? The FDCPA has a lot of really good functions, right? And there are a lot of reasons why you want an FDCPA. You don't want debt collectors and people calling you in the middle of the night. They don't want calling everybody and trying to do insanely unethical things, right? That's all FDCPA. And so those collectors don't come and do really nuts things. Now, real quick, one thing that's mentioned here, and I want to give a shout out to potentially criminal Sean. He actually did a really excellent and objective video on this on his channel. Over here, Sean did why violating the FDCPA leads to big problems. And Sean did a very neutral presentation of this. And he talks a lot about, he did a really good job. I watched, the first bit of it. He does a really good job of talking about the importance of the FDCPA, the history of the FDCPA, and what was going on before the FDCPA existed. And I wouldn't call Sean Liz Warren, right? I mean, Sean is not some sort of radical, like woke leftist, right? I would not describe Sean as that. So if you think another lawyer describing that as some sort of crazy or a loser or whatever else, that's one thing. But definitely Dave got a very good description there of that. So I would highly recommend his video. I think it's really, really good. I just want to take that second to plug it right there. Yeah, it's a very long video, but it's a good one.
That it's like someone literally sent out one letter that the guy forgot about, because the guy.
So, and let me be clear, because he's being a little bit disingenuous on the facts here. He sent out an illegal cross-state subpoena on Christmas, right? The day after Christmas, but semantics, right? It's a federal holiday, right? So it's Christmas. You're getting your presents. You're opening your presents like a day late because, you know, stuff was happening on Christmas. And all of a sudden you get a letter on December 26th, right? So this was not like a little mistake. It was a big mistake. And there were several violations. There was a violation of the cross-state element. There's a violation of the way in which it was served, and also the fact that it was served on a federal holiday, right? So there's multiple issues and deficiencies with this, not just one.
Actually owed at that point in time with interest like $17,000. He actually owed money. And I sent him a letter, which is a subpoena, which, by the way, if the subpoena had been served by, instead of by hand, but had been served by like someone there,
Mm-hmm.
if it had been, you know, if we had taken the proper steps, the subpoena itself was completely fine. There's nothing wrongful about that.
Well, except for some of the cross-state elements, right? So the cross-state element and the when it was delivered. But what I guess he's saying that the method, he's talking right now about the method, and yes, the method was faulty.
But because of the fact that it hadn't been properly entered in Florida and served by a marshal, so it was technically a violation of the.
That's really clear in Florida law. So, like, once again, understanding Florida law is really important if you're going to be serving people in Florida, you know, and that's just part of your practice. Like, if you're practicing in an area where you're doing cross-state collections, you need to understand that law. If you're not, then don't do that, right? If you just want to stick to New York law, that's fine. Then just stick to New York law and New York collections. But, you know, if you're going to engage in cross-state, you do need to understand that as a lawyer, we have these affirmative duties to learn the laws if we don't know them. If we're practicing law, we can't just say, oh man, I forgot about this law in the area I'm practicing in. No, don't practice there, right? Don't engage in that area of law. For example, right, there were, I know Florida real estate law. I'm a Florida lawyer. But if I was asked a question about Georgia real estate law by a client, I said, you know what? I don't know Georgia law. Go hire somebody in Georgia, or I can recommend you to somebody in Georgia who can help you out with Georgia real estate law. I can do stuff that's federal law. I can do stuff that's Florida law, but I can't do stuff that's Georgia law. And that's just the way it is. You say, I don't know that. I can't do that. That's part of our duty, our ethical duty as a lawyer. So that part is something you can't just say, oh, well, it was a thing that I didn't know. Like, that's not an excuse as a lawyer. That part is really a dangerous cope, because I don't want it to make it seem like, you know, once again, as lawyers, that we can just get around these duties. These are our duties. We have to do them. And if we don't do them, we are at fault, which is why, honestly, a lot of people say, well, do you prefer to take on clients as a lawyer or a consultant? As a consultant, because frankly, the duties as a lawyer are extreme. When you take on a legal client, right, you have a lot of duties to follow: confidentiality, protection of information, a duty of competence, right? And you need to take these things very, very seriously.
FDCPA. But that's basically, that's the story right there. I'm probably going to having to address this on Saturday night, because now meme code, like the people who are like desperate to like find some sort of content, are like, ooh.
So desperate to find content. So he mentions meme copium. Once again, Sean also covered it, but very, very interestingly, he doesn't mention Sean, despite the fact that Sean was on his 100K celebration stream like a day or two ago. So he decides to intentionally single out meme copium, a smaller channel who's a non-lawyer, right? He's just a guy who likes the law. He likes LawTube stuff. He's been actually involved in covering LawTube since Rittenhouse Depp era time, because he's just interested in that. He finds it very interesting. So he's been covering that for a while, but he's not a lawyer. But other lawyers were covering that, and we're covering this issue, Sean specifically.
Oh, his video borders on slander. I'm probably gonna watch
his
it.
video is not slanderous, whatever. I don't know who said that in the chat. His video is not slanderous, whatever, at all whatsoever. And Meme Copium has been covering a lot of different topics. He's covered Ricada, he's covered Nick and his saga, and now he's covered just Joe's stuff here. But he's also covered stuff like Rings of Power. He's also covered stuff like weird stuff in Japan. The guy's covered a lot of different topics. He's covered Chris Chan, right? A lot of different stuff that's interesting out there on the internet, stuff that's kind of fun. He's covered a lot of different topics, not just this specific topic. So it wasn't like he was going out here like, ooh, it's my time to get Joe. It's just his chat. When you're out there as a content creator, and you're covering these type of topics, you're covering LawTube in general, and you all of a sudden have a complaint and your chat is asking for you to do it, people are requesting for you to cover this. And I frankly think he covered it in a very fair and objective way. And the funny thing is, a lot of the comments he makes and has made, he makes without ever viewing the video himself, because he has already said he hasn't watched it, right? So you're making these comments without deciding whether or not this person covered you fairly or unfairly. And to be honest, even Meme Copium said he likes Joe. He doesn't have any problem with Joe, right? So this coming out and making really aggressive statements and calling him slanderous, etc., without ever even watching his video is perhaps something you should do beforehand, right?
I'll probably watch it saying, how long is his video? An hour and 44 minutes? An hour and 44 minutes.
Covering that hour and 44 minutes will be the best coverage he's had in a while. By the way, we'll talk about his numbers, because I think Joe thinks he's punching down here, but actually, in a way, he's actually punching up, because Meme Copium is actually beating him in most metrics, which perhaps is something behind a little bit of the salt here. But we'll get into that.
Wow, an hour and 44 minutes. Schadenfreude. People, oh my gosh. Wow.
And I've got a clip for that Schadenfreude part. Don't worry about that. Where that Schadenfreude comment is going to come back.
All right. A large. All right. Trust me, if there's $100,000 judgment against Meme Copium, no one would actually care.
See that's just a petty ass comment. Come on, Joe. You're better than that, man. You're better than that. Okay. First of all, I would care, right? And I know he's got a lot of friends. They would care too. But guess what? There's no judgment against him, because he didn't commit cross-state violations of federal law, right? I mean, so instead of trying to say, hey, nobody cares about this guy and attack him in that way, which once again, you don't know him that well. Now, mind you, Joe and Meme Copium have actually been on stream together. In fact, I think they've been on my stream together. I don't recall, but I don't recall which stream exactly, but I think I've invited both of them on in the past when I used to do panels, which I don't do anymore because they're Drama City, USA, right? And there's always crap with panels. But, these guys have been on stream together. They had an amiable relationship. And then to flip like this without, without thinking quickly, I think Joe's better than this. He should be better than this.
I won't actually bother with that. So he's been in a mudslinging mood ever since Nick. Like, I don't know.
See, and that's another thing too. So to me, it's like, okay, is this really about you, or is this about Nick? And is this really about the fact that you're not happy at people covering Nick, whether it's Sean, Meme Copium, me, Nate, Uncivil, which all have been very fair. I mean, if you look at the coverage, of those that have covered these issues, it's been pretty neutral. And frankly, once again, I think Meme Copium actually said this himself, the hammer always enjoys hitting the nail until it becomes the nail, right? So all of a sudden you're the subject of the coverage. And when someone does the exact same coverage that you are doing on a routine basis of legal cases of other people, right? And then all of a sudden it's your coverage, it's a problem, or they're a loser, or they're a mook, or whatever else you wanted to call them, right? A mudslinger, right? It's very, it's weird.
He's the classic. I mean, this is like your classic, loser trying to punch up.
Loser trying to punch up. So let's we're gonna go and how much of a loser he is in a second. I got another 20 seconds here, but loser trying to punch up.
But I do need to address this $117,000 judgment, because a lot of people are going to have questions about it. It is what it is. And if anything, I think it makes me look sympathetic. It's like, wow, you make one mistake and all of a sudden you get hit with 117,000. That's pretty insane. It's pretty freaking insane.
Okay. So that happened. Okay, so that was his statement. So we've now heard that's a clip of his statement. Obviously, he had a fuller stream, but those are the ones I really wanted to get at because it was coming at my buddy here. Now, Good Logic has just hit a certain milestone. Okay, so he's hit a certain milestone of 100K subs, which is great for him, good for him. It's a great milestone, should be celebrated. That's really awesome. Cool, 100K subs. But there's a certain point at which when you get larger as a content creator that you feel like you can now have the power to call people losers because they're not where you're at with subs. So if you look at him, he's at 102K subs. And he looks over and he probably looks at Meme Copium and he looks at his channel and he goes, oh, Meme Copium, look at him. He's got 17.9K subs. What a loser. He's a loser. He's only got 17.9K subs. What a loser. You know what? I remember when both Joe and I had sub 10K subs. Both of us were there. We were both there at that same point. Were we losers then? Right? Were we losers then? So the funny thing is, if you look at Meme Copium's numbers, look at these streams here. 24K views, 20K views, 19. Let's go back over to Joe for a second. Let's go back over to Joe's recent streams. Let's look at this. 11K views, 12K, 7.9K, 11K. Is Joe who's the loser? Are we going by subs or views? Because to me, maybe you could also make an argument you're a loser if you've got 10x the subs almost and you've got less views. So who's the loser? Who's the real loser here? And what metrics are we going on? What is your metric for success? Who's a winner and who's a loser? I really, that comment in particular really pissed me off. And that was the one that made me say, I got to do this video, because coming down and punching down at people, it not just violates the rules of the internet, but it's just wrong here. And to me, it almost looks like sour grapes because he's covering stuff. He's getting attention. He's getting coverage. He's getting viewers. And you're trying to take that away from him by calling him a loser? Yeah. Am I a loser because I have less views too? Yeah. Whatever, right? I have less views in some of my videos than Meme Copium. So if anything, Meme Copium's the chat in here.